Hey, I'm Zoo. Nice to see you. The date is September 10th, and Jack Eichel still has not been traded by the Buffalo Sabres. It has been reported that tensions have been growing between the Sabres and Eichel, as Eichel has just hired a new agent. So that got me wondering, what would it take all NHL teams to trade for Jack Eichel? It's been evident that Jack Eichel probably isn't going to start this season as a Buffalo Sabre, so a trade probably is coming soon. So in this video, we're going to simulate all 30 NHL teams and see what it would take for each team to trade for Eichel. But before we get started, if you're excited to see where Jack Eichel ends up, leave a like down below and also leave a comment to which team you think he's actually going to get traded to. But without further ado, let's get started.
Yeah, nightmares keep haunting me. Being at the top is never guaranteed. Last thing I want is a nominee. Wanna stack up awards like 1, 2, 3. Keep calm and relax, I'm supposed to be.
Before we get started, I just wanted to let you guys know that we set the trade difficulty to easy. On medium, with players as high value as Eichel, it's impossible to trade for him. So we set it to easy just to make the trades more realistic. Also, I had to turn the salary cap off. A lot of these trades had me end up taking up spots to get rid of cap instead of adding value, since Eichel has a $10 million contract. But let's get into the trades. To start things off with the Anaheim Ducks, I had a trade for John Gibson, Jamie Drysdale, and 3 first-round picks for Eichel and Dustin Tokarski. I really can't see Anaheim doing this because Gibson has played amazing for the Ducks, and Drysdale has such a bright future, and 3 firsts is a lot on top of those players. So for Arizona, I have Jacob Chychrun, Clayton Keller, and 3 first-round picks for Jack Eichel. I might see Arizona doing this if they had the draft picks. They have tons of cap space and are in desperate need of a superstar to build around. Keller and Chychrun have been great for Arizona, but are they too good to not give up for Eichel? That is the question. Let's move on to Boston. For Boston, I have Patrice Bergeron, Jack Studnicka, Jake DeBrusk, and a first for Eichel. I could absolutely see Boston doing this trade. Losing Bergeron does hurt, but when the band-aid is Jack Eichel, it's not that bad, especially since Bergeron is aging and they could have Eichel for at least a decade. Imagine having a forward core of David Pastrnak, Jack Eichel, Brad Marchand, and Taylor Hall. Studnicka is a good center prospect, but yet again, you're getting Eichel in return. DeBrusk has fallen off quite a bit in Boston, so I don't see him leaving as a hurt, and only giving up 1 first-rounder is a huge W for Boston in my opinion. Let's go to Calgary. So after over 10 minutes of trying to trade on easy trade difficulty, I could not come up with a trade. The most ridiculous it got to was Tkachuk, Backlund, Monahan, and 2 firsts, and they still said no. In real life, I don't think it would be the Sabres saying no to this one, but more so of Calgary. As a Flames fan, there's been so many Eichel coming to Calgary rumors, and the most common package usually includes Monahan, a prospect whether it be Coronado, Peltier, or Zari, and some picks, which I could see Calgary doing, but I'm still unsure if Buffalo is down. In Carolina, I was unable to complete a deal, which is pretty ludicrous seeming that I was offering newly acquired Kotkaniemi, a great prospect Ponomarev, Slavin, and 2 first-round picks. That's a huge chunk of change to give up for, yes, a great player, but remember that he still requires neck surgery. Meanwhile, Carolina is in it to win it this year with newly acquired goalie tandem Anderson and Ranta, as well as picking up Kotkaniemi and young offensive defenseman Ethan Bear. I think in real life, Carolina is the team to say no in this deal. In Chicago, a pretty unrealistic trade for the Blackhawks, which sees Buffalo asking for way more than they probably can get for Eichel. The trade is Kirby Dach, Alex Nylander, and 3 first-round picks. This trade doesn't happen for a couple of reasons. The first being Alex Nylander was already a Sabre before being traded to the Blackhawks for Henri Jokiharju. There's no reason for me to believe that Buffalo would want him back. The other reason would be Chicago not wanting to give up Kirby Dach. After putting up 23 points in 64 games in his rookie season, the 3rd overall pick of the Hawks put up 6 points in 9 games in those playoffs, then had 10 points in 18 games the following season. With Chicago's win-now mentality after bringing in Fleury, Seth Jones, and others, there's no way they part ways with Dach. Also, 3 first-round picks? That's a little much. Alright, this one's just a little bit funny. Another one of those unrealistic trades. I was able to get Buffalo to say if we sweeten the value just a touch, we would have a deal. However, I find it pretty hard to sweeten the deal when you're already giving up Rantanen, Landeskog, and 3 first-round picks. I think the only thing that would make them say yes is if we gave them McKinnon. Wait, would that actually work? Okay, I'm kind of glad they didn't say no there. An interesting trade for sure. Columbus gives up newly acquired defenseman Adam Boqvist, Oliver Bjorkstrand, 2 firsts, and a second. I'm really not sure who says no here. This trade would leave Columbus with literally only Werenski, Jake Bean, and Gavrikov on defense. But it would also see them with a line of Eichel, Laine, and either Nyquist or Voracek. 2 firsts and a second is definitely something Columbus can afford, but is it worth giving it up? If your team's best player is currently an underperforming Laine, you're going to be bad, which means those picks are going to be worth a lot. Just like Colorado, after giving up half of their key roster, Buffalo still says no. After offering Buffalo Ben Bishop, John Klingberg, Rupe Hintz, Alex Radulov, and a first, Buffalo still tells me that my offer was woefully insufficient. I decided to move on. No questions here. Dallas says no to this deal before Buffalo. Now, Detroit is an interesting one. To make this deal work, we had to give up Dylan Larkin, Joe Velino, Michael Rasmussen, and 2 firsts. Now let's dive into this deal. Eichel in 375 games has 355 points, which is a 0.95 points per game. Larkin in 433 games has 289 points, which is a 0.68 points per game. Eichel is definitely a good increase, but is it worth throwing in 2 top 6 forward prospects and 2 more first rounders? I'll let you, the viewer, decide in the comments down below on that one. On to Edmonton, and let me start by saying this. Please, God, do not let Jack Eichel go to Edmonton. I don't even want to start thinking about a forward core consisting of Eichel, Draisaitl, and Connor McDavid. Anyways, I tried giving up Nurse, Nugent Hopkins, Yamamoto, and 2 firsts, and it was still woefully insufficient. So I really don't think there's any way for Edmonton to get Jack Eichel in this simulation without parting ways with either McDavid or Draisaitl. So out of curiosity, what else can we get on top of Eichel for Draisaitl? Well, apparently we can easily get Dahlin too. Good to know, Oilers fans. Okay, so Florida is in a weird spot here. Since we're simulating these trades in NHL 21, you're only allowed to trade 5 pieces each per team. So I offered Buffalo center prospect Anton Lundell, Dennis Senko, and 3 firsts. Buffalo said that I would need to sweeten it just a touch, but unfortunately, I don't have another slot to add a player. So I believe with an additional pick added to this deal, Buffalo will say yes. The big reason I didn't want to swap out Denisenko for someone like Sam Reinhart with a little more value is because Florida just recently acquired him from Buffalo, so that would be kind of backwards. But because of the recent moves Florida has made, they're genuinely a cup contender, so because of that, I could genuinely see them making this deal. So for the LA Kings, we have another interesting trade. We give Buffalo Turcotte, Mikey Anderson, 2 firsts, and a second for Eichel. With Drew Doughty telling the Kings that he doesn't want to rebuild for the rest of his career, and the acquisitions of Danault and Edler, I can see a little light of hope for the Kings, especially if their prospects grow and make the roster, but giving up 2 of these key prospects and 3 more picks just might not be in the cards for LA. Alright, so another interesting deal here, this time with Minnesota. We are forced to give up Kaprizov, 3 firsts, and Kalen Addison. Now this deal is specifically interesting because the reigning Calder winner Kaprizov is still a restricted free agent. So if we dealt him to the Sabres, who's to say that Kaprizov actually plays a game in Buffalo? That would make it 3 firsts and Addison for Eichel, which is a pretty sweet deal. I could honestly see Minnesota pulling the trigger on this one. I'm not even going to bother with Montreal. Well, I did try, but 2 minutes into offering, I had Petrie, Price, 2 firsts, and Suzuki on the table, and apparently their value was too far off. Montreal would be tweaking to offer something like that, and Buffalo would be tweaking to not accept an offer like that. So let's move on. So this was the original deal. Nashville gives Tolvanen, a late 2017 first rounder, 3 firsts, and Ekholm. I was told to sweeten the value a touch, so instead of Ekholm, I threw in Philip Forsberg. I was told the value was too far off. So if that's the case, let's say the deal that goes through is Tolvanen, 3 firsts, Ekholm, and maybe a second. And if that's the case, Nashville might pull the trigger on this, but they definitely wouldn't if Forsberg is in the deal instead of Ekholm. Now this one is an interesting one. New Jersey gives Hischier, Boqvist, 2 firsts, and a second. Now note that one of the firsts is the Islanders picks, which more than likely will not be a lottery pick. Jesper Boqvist is a 22-year-old second-round pick by New Jersey in 2017. He scored 4 goals in his rookie year in 1920 in 35 games, and had 7 points in 28 games last year. So that leads to the question, is Eichel worth realistically Hischier a first and a second? Maybe, but I wonder if we'll ever know. The Islanders are one of those teams in this simulation where I just kind of scratch my head and wonder why the Buffalo AI general manager doesn't accept these trades. On the table is Noah Dobson, Oliver Wahlstrom, and 3 first-round picks. And Buffalo says no. In real life, it's definitely the Islanders who say no to this one. The Rangers are another one of those teams in the running for Jack Eichel in real life. This trade is actually not too damaging for them. The Rangers send Kakko, Kravtsov, 2 firsts, and a second. It's been reported that if this deal were to happen in real life, either Kakko or Lafreniere would have to be a part of it. If I were Chris Drury, the Rangers general manager, I would prefer giving up Kakko. Kravtsov hasn't really done anything crazy for the Rangers yet, with only 4 points in 20 games in his career, but the future is bright for the big Russian. It's an interesting trade for sure, but I'm not sure if New York would say yes to this or not. Okay, so Ottawa's deal actually isn't too bad. The deal is Eric Brandstrom, Shane Pinto, Chris Tierney, and 2 firsts. Brandstrom has tons of potential, but really hasn't done a whole lot in the NHL yet. He's only put up 17 points in 63 games. Pinto, a second-round selection of the Senators, has actually looked pretty good in the 12 games of his career with Ottawa, putting up 7 points and a +6. Tierney would be a solid center for Buffalo, maybe even their first-line center with Eichel gone, and the 2 firsts sweeten the deal. Ottawa might honestly do this trade, seeming that it doesn't completely ruin their young core of Chabot, Tkachuk, Connor Brown, Batherson, Stützle, and others. In Philly, this is another one of those situations where I honestly just sit there and laugh at Buffalo for not accepting a trade. Claude Giroux, 2 firsts, Joel Farabee, and Ivan Provorov. How would Buffalo sit there and see the 3 players that their values are higher combined than Eichel's, as well as 2 firsts on top, and say no? Yikes. Let's move on. Well, this one was quick. It took a whole 20 seconds to make this deal work. If Pittsburgh really wants to get Eichel without losing Crosby, then they either have to lose Malkin or Gensel. And with Malkin 9 years older than Gensel and $3.5 million more, I think the obvious answer is to lose Malkin. Really, all it took was Malkin and a first-round pick for Eichel. And honestly, I don't see Buffalo doing this in real life. With Malkin at his age and only getting 1 first, there's tons of better packages for Eichel out there. So for San Jose, it's a pretty cut and dry trade. Ryan Merkley, Thomas Hertl, and 3 firsts. San Jose is in a really awkward situation where their core is getting kinda old and their goalie tandem consists of Aiden Hill and James Reimer, which means they're not really a contender. I don't see them eyeballing Eichel at all, with a young core coming up that consists of players like Timo Meier, Mario Ferraro, Ryan Merkley, Kevin LeBanc, Ivan Chekovich, and others. This is definitely a questionable one. Tarasenko and Eichel have relatively the same trade value in NHL 21, so I thought this was going to be simple. Tarasenko and a first for Eichel should have done it, right? Well, after offering Tarasenko, Perron, and 3 firsts and being told that it was nowhere near the value needed, I kind of just gave up. In real life, The trade makes sense. Both Tarasenko and Eichel want out of their teams. Maybe St. Louis gives up an extra pick on the account of Eichel being a bit younger and better. But this trade definitely does not need 3 picks and an extra roster player and more for Jack Eichel. Now, this is one of the most obvious never happening trades in this simulation. One of the big preventers of Eichel going to the Lightning is cap space, hence why I had to turn it off for these trades. Another big preventer is basically I really couldn't make this trade to go through without taking one of Tampa's core pieces. The trade is set in stone, Cirelli and 3 firsts. And then you kind of just take your pick between either Stamkos, Point, Hedman, or Kucherov. There is no way in hell Tampa trades one of those 4 players straight across for Eichel, especially if 3 firsts and a solid center is also on the table. Okay, this is another one I really don't see happening. So the original plan was to move Liljegren, but even with 3 firsts and Robertson, Buffalo still says no. So I took off Liljegren and Robertson and put up Tavares in 3 firsts. Still no. Marner and 3 firsts was the deal that made it happen, and that's probably the easiest no Toronto could ever give. In real life, I could see a deal happening for Eichel involving Liljegren and maybe Robertson, but that clearly isn't going to happen in this simulation. Without trying to ruin Vancouver's core of Pettersson, Hughes, Besser, OEL, and Horvat, I immediately knew that I would have to throw in 3 firsts. Now, Höglander has brutal trade value in this game. It's almost on par with Joel Levy, which Canucks fans will tell you how wrong that is in a heartbeat. So JT Miller was the odd one out. It required Miller and 4 first-round picks for Buffalo to tell us to sweeten the deal a little, but that's already way more than Vancouver is willing. Maybe Paul Kozin is in a deal for Eichel, but there's a very good chance that he makes the opening night roster for Vancouver, so I really don't think there's a viable trade for Vancouver to land Eichel. So this is another one I couldn't quite get to work. It was close when I offered newly acquired Nolan Patrick, 2 firsts, and Cody Glass. However, when I threw in another first or Marchessault, it seemed like my value went down instead of up. If the Sabres are interested in the Glass, Patrick, and 2 firsts deal, I could see Vegas genuinely consider this. Patrick, the former 2nd overall pick in 2017, only has 70 points in 197 NHL games, but he's been fighting serious injury problems since making the NHL. Between the 2 firsts and Glass, I feel that Vegas would be more hesitant with giving up Glass and the picks more than anything, seeming that we know Vegas is a good team and those firsts will be in the late first round. It's definitely enticing, but I think Vegas says no. In Washington, I really don't see this trade happening. Without touching Ovi or Karlsson, the next best option is Kuznetsov, whose value is only slightly less than Karlsson, and with 3 firsts and a defenseman prospect Alexiev on top, Buffalo still says no. I initially started this trade with Backstrom, and if this trade were to go down in real life, I could honestly see Backstrom going to Buffalo. However, Kuznetsov, a 28-year-old only making $7.8 million, who could easily be a top-line center on any team, with 3 firsts and a solid defenseman prospect, and they still say no? Yeah, I'll pass on that one. And last but not least, Winnipeg, which Buffalo once again makes me laugh. Cole Perfetti, Christian Vesalainen, and 3 firsts, and Buffalo says no. Yikes. Even with this trade, Winnipeg would be in cap hell, which is another reason why I believe there really isn't a possible trade here, unless you unload someone like Captain Wheeler or Kyle Connor. And that does it. That's all 30 possible trades for each team in the NHL to land Jack Eichel. Who do you think has the best chance to trade for him? Let me know down below in the comments, as I'll respond to all of them. And if you want to see more awesome hockey videos, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Take care and have a good one.